Megillah Daf Yud Beis. How's everybody doing? The Gemara tells us Rav Nachman bar Rav Chizda had a drasha. He says HaKadosh Baruch Hu came with a complaint to Mashiach. He was upset about Koresh. He told Koresh, go ahead, let Klal Yisrael go up to Tzirel, gather them, build a Beis Hamikdash. And instead, all Koresh did was he gave them permission, but he didn't help them out. The Gemara tells us that Mada and Paras, they made a deal between each other. They said, if one of us is going to be king, then the other one will be the governors. It says in the Megillah, Yekar Teferes, that Achashverosh took out of the closet the big day Kohen Gadol and he wore them, obviously a big mistake. What he did was, he made a massive feast for those enemies that were very distant, but defeated them. In order to get them back on his side, he made them a feast for 180 days. Some say that was Chachma, because the ones that are close to him you can make peace with at any time. It's the further ones. The others say, no, it's tipshus. First, you have to get close to the ones that are close to you in case there's a rebellion. But why was Klal Yisrael chayiv misa in the time of Purim? And Rav Shimon bar Yochai tells us it's because they bowed to the Avodah Zarah by Nebuchadnezzar, and because they only did it out of fear, that's why their punishment was fear. The whole story was out of fear. But it's not the pshat because they benefited from the Su'udah of Achashverosh, because that was only the people of Shushan and not the rest of Klal Yisrael did not chayiv misa. It says in the pasuk, "B'chasar ginas bisan," 3 places. So whoever was roi, was chashuv, he put them in the special place. Less. It says in the pasuk, "Chur karpas." Chur could be a lashon of a hole. There was a lot of needlework, or a lashon of white chiver. There was white linen. Zav kesef, the couches were made out of silver, but the legs were gold. Ritzbas bahat, it was made out of jewels that are very hard to get to. And darvis ocheres, there were rows of jewels. Dara, there was a special jewel on the table that lit up like the afternoon. And the Megillah says, don't you learn from Belshazzar? He wore the big day Kohen Gadol and he died. What about you? You're just repeating the same mistake. V'yein. What is the machloikes? Either yain was so good, it was older than the people drinking it, or we learn from the Mizbeach that just like the Mizbeach, you put the food, there's more food than wine, so too by the Suda of Achashverosh. Kirtzoin, Mordechai, and Haman. Mordechai and Haman were both the Sarah Mashkim of this meal of Achashverosh. It says, Bayom HaShvi, what was the significance of Shvi? It was Shabbos. That was the day that Klal Yisrael always learned Torah. They say over the Torah by the meal, and they give Tishbachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But a guy, when he sits down, they were discussing whose wife is better looking and not. And then Achashverosh said, well, mine is the best. They said, let's bring her out, but make sure she's unclothed. But that was a midah connected midah, because Vashti did the same thing to Klal Yisrael, to the girls of Klal Yisrael. She worked them on Shabbos without clothing. And even though Vashti herself was a prutza, she didn't want to come. Why? Because she had either tzaras or she grew a tail. Achashverosh kas baraboy. Why? Because Vashti told him, you're no better than the stable boy you wore once. My father could drink up 1,000 cups of wine and it doesn't become shikar. You drink a little bit and you lose it. He said to the Chachamim Yoidei Itim, which are the Chachamim of Klal Yisrael, who know how to do Kiddush HaChodesh, what should I do with my wife? And they said they didn't want to get involved because it was dangerous. They could lose their life over this. They said, go to Moav. And in fact, they took it from a pasuk. The Malachim mentioned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu the karbanos of Klal Yisrael in order to have an Akam and Vashti, and that Esther should go back. And they said, Karshana, it's a lashon of a lamb. Klal Yisrael brings lambs, brings doves, built a mizbeach admasa out of dirt. Where did the guy? They wear big day tarshish, they wear Kohen Gadol clothing, meres, marsana, meres, they mix the blood, marsana, they mix the menachas, memuchan, they bring lechem apanim on the shulchan. The Gemara tells us that Haman, his name was memuchan, he's muchan leparanos. He's ready for disaster. And because he was a boor, he ran, he jumped before everybody else, and he gave advice. The Gemara tells us, if not for the first letters that Achashverosh sent out, luckily everybody thought that he's a shaita, and therefore they didn't listen to the second letters that said that you should kill the Jews. The first letter said that the man has to be the man of the house. And they said, of course, what's the chiddush? The Gemara tells us that somebody who's clever uses seichel, and somebody that's not clever. In other words, David HaMelech was clever, and when he got old, he needed a naira psula, and he said, bring one. So everybody wanted to marry David HaMelech. All the fathers wanted to bring the daughters. But by Achashverosh, he said, Vayafki Pkidim, gather everybody. And the guy knew that's no good. Only one of them is going to become the queen, yet he's going to violate all of them. Memela, they hid all their daughters. The Gemara tells us that Mordechai had different names. Ben Shimi, Ben Yair, Ben Kish. Each one represented something. Ben Yair, that he lit up Shemayim with his tefillah. Kish means Hikish. He knocked on the door of Rachamim and it opened. On the one hand, the Torah calls Mordechai Yehudi, Ish Yehudi. On the other hand, it calls him Ish Yemini. Yehudi means he's from Shevet Yehuda. Yemini means he's from Shevet Binyamin. So the Gemara tells us that there's in fact a fight between the families. Each family said, Mordechai's from our family. Yamin said, Mordechai's from our family. The other side the Gemara tells us is the Knesset Yisrael said the opposite. Klal Yisrael blamed Shimi ben Gera, David, for not killing Shimi ben Gera, that is. In other words, if David would have killed Shimi ben Gera, there wouldn't be Mordechai. If there's no Mordechai, there wouldn't be a fight between Mordechai and Haman, there wouldn't be Purim. It's David's fault. Or the other one said, no, it's Binyamin's fault, because Shaul let Agag live, and because Agag lived, there was Haman. Have a wonderful day.